Looking to make some healthier habits this holiday season? Make sure to check out our Moving Through Midlife community over on Facebook, as we are doing a Planksgiving event where we are doing daily plank workouts. We will be doing an Advent for healthy, happy hips this holiday season, and then also have a sugar challenge, a 2-week sugar challenge that you might be interested in. Happy holidays!
Welcome to Raising Healthy Humans, a podcast created for busy moms, where you can easily find info on health and wellness for your family. Join Courtney, a health coach, movement and posture specialist, and founder of FormFit, an active and supportive community where she helps busy moms move more. Here on Raising Healthy Humans podcast, she shares personal life experiences, training, knowledge, and conversations with other health and wellness experts so you can raise healthy humans.
Today I'm speaking with Katherine, a school counselor turned parenting consultant. She will be helping us to work with our children to ease the stress and anxiety that they may be dealing with, while also letting us know it is okay when our children aren't picking up the things we continue to ask them to do day in and day out. This was a personal thing that I was dealing with my kids, and she's here to let us know it is okay. So I hope you enjoy our conversation. I found a lot of the tips she provides very valuable, and I think you'll have some really good takeaways from this episode. Enjoy. Hi, Katherine. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to have you on. This month, we have been really focusing on anxiety and helping families work through their anxiety. So I wanted to have you on to be able to speak with you about things that may help families and especially children with anxiety, because I know that you have worked in the school system.
Yes, I was a school
And
counselor.
okay, as a school counselor. And what
Yes.
has made you to decide to work with the parents instead?
So I was a school counselor for almost 15 years, and I love working with kids. I love helping families. And I just felt like for so many years, there were just not enough resources for parents. I was able to help the kids at school, but a lot of the kids that I was working with and helping with certain situations in the school were kids that were having struggles in the school setting. And what I found was that there were a lot of parents that were reaching out to me saying, my kid's great at school, but we're having all these struggles at home with, not major behaviors, but routines and things at home. And there weren't a lot of resources to refer those parents to that might not need therapy or a counseling setting, but just might need a little bit of support. So that's kind of why I started what I'm doing. And essentially, it's kind of like coaching for parents. So I try and help parents like find a little more harmony in their homes.
Okay. And what what are you noticing is like the most common problem that you see with families and finding this harmony?
So a lot of what I'm seeing lately is basic like executive functioning skills. And when I say that, I mean like time management, organization, problem solving, initiating tasks, and kind of like overall, and it can kind of coexist with that anxiety and other issues. But a lot of those things are pretty straightforward things that are easily managed, but you just have to know kind of like how to do that. Obviously anxiety has been something that we've seen a lot of, especially lately. But I work with, a lot of parents on, kind of increasing compliance at home.
Mhm.
Parents reach out to me all the time saying, I have to ask my kids 5, 6, 7 times or more to, just basically follow any directions and kind of sometimes just helping set up some pretty simple routines and incentive plans at home help with that.
Okay. So before we talk about anxiety, because I knew this was
Yeah.
probably going to initiative, kids taking
Yes.
initiative. What is it something that we're doing wrong? I mean, it does not matter how many times over the years that we would tell our child to put the take your lunchbox out of your backpack, put it in the kitchen.
Hmm.
Doesn't happen. Same thing with, now I have two older boys and their job's to empty the dishwasher and take out the trash. And
Hmm.
neither one gets done unless I'm saying it 3 and 4 and 5 times a day. So
And
help me with this because I
you
know
are
that.
not doing anything wrong. I mean, I have parents call me literally every day with these exact same struggles. And, I have three boys. I am not certainly saying that everything gets done the first time I ask things to get done at my house, but it's very typical. Kids are not just born motivated to do whatever their parents are asked to, asking of them. So teaching that kind of like intrinsic motivation is important. So motivation is the key to getting kids to follow through with what we're asking them to do. So finding what motivates them is the key to it. And sometimes how you motivate them is the key to it. So, I just had a meeting with a client this morning where we set up a checklist with a dry erase board on a a clipboard that's right by the door. And it's just basic things. Unload your backpack, put your lunchbox by the sink, put your water bottle by the sink, get your shoes where the shoes go, not right next to where the shoes go, and things like that. So really straightforward things that you kind of, expect them to do, but it's sometimes easier when it's laid out in a list format where you can physically check it off. And then there's some type of reward system. So I'm a big believer in positive reinforcement. I think it always is more successful. It helps when you praise the behavior you expect rather than saying, you're not doing what I'm asking you to do, so I'm taking this away. That just, it feels bad. It's negative. And certainly there's things that require consequences, but for the most part, acknowledging what you're expecting, first of all, making sure they know what you expect,
Right.
then acknowledging it and then rewarding it. And when I say reward, I don't mean like take them out to, I get ice cream just because they've unloaded the dishwasher. I'm talking about simple things like, whether it's technology or things like, if your kids are interested or motivated by like video games or time on a tablet,
Mm-hmm.
when you do these things, then you can maybe earn a technology ticket that you can cash in to use to play your video games or to play your tablet. So I think when we change the mentality of, all of these things are just given to you, and also we need you to do these chores, when you say, really at the end of the day, we need to provide shelter and food and love and safety, but all of the other stuff, the TVs and the video games and toys and all that stuff is like extra. And so when you do these things that we expect you to do, because in our house we want you to unload the dishwasher, we want you to put these things away, then you get those extra things, whether it's whatever it is that motivates them. Maybe for girls, I have a client that they love the American Girl dolls, and so time like that is in having kids be a part of what motivates them, and letting that is really helpful and really successful. So
Okay.
you're not doing anything wrong. It happens in every house.
Okay. Well, and
Sometimes it's just
I
about how
have,
you structure it.
yes, yes. And for me, I mean, I immediately know, like for my older kids, what that is. My middle son, it's having opportunity to get online, video games. And then my oldest, I mean, he's 17, so it's having his girlfriend come over. So it's gonna love it when I'm like, well, she can't come over until this gets done.
Right. And I also find it really helpful when you just like simple ways you word things rather than saying like, if you do these things, then we can do this. It's when you do this. So they know it's not an option not to. When you do
Okay.
these things, then you get this, and a lot of times when you, it's so interesting when you talk to kids about what might motivate them and you ask them. I would say almost every time I talk to kids about this or have talked to kids about this, what they want is time with their parents. So it's like, maybe I get 10 extra minutes to stay up at night and pick a book out with and read a book just with my mom, or take a walk with just my dad, or, and it doesn't have to be anything, super exhausting or crazy, but little things like that so often are what they are craving. And that kind of fulfills then a lot of buckets there.
Yes. And thinking about that, I've noticed myself with my daughter. kind of leaning into that is sometimes you think it's going to be one thing, but really just taking time to really notice them changes that whole experience or whatever. I started to realize, so there was a situation in our household where my daughter had her phone taken away for a little bit. And I noticed that our conversations were richer because
Mhm.
she didn't have that to go to. So, I mean, I think what you mentioned is definitely true that sometimes we don't think, and children like ourselves get into habits to where sometimes that
Mhm.
affects what we think they want, but really what they want is to spend that time with us or to tell us a
Right.
story or whatever.
Exactly. I mean, I have so many parents that say, "Oh, well, we'll just, we can give them tablet time or whatever because you think that's what they want." And
Mhm.
really, they might want to pick something that's for dinner tonight. They might be motivated by saying, "I want to put an extra special something on the grocery list to get it the next time we go to the store." Like things like that, it doesn't have to be, buying things. It doesn't have to be anything big. A lot of times it's that intentional time also. It's not just being, physically next to each other for 10 or 15 minutes. It's putting your phones away, intentionally devoting that time to each other, making eye contact, and it's a whole nother conversation of, just kids' abilities, nowadays in the generation that we've got growing up of being able to communicate and having face-to-face genuine conversations and eye contact where we've noticed a big difference in that lately of kids struggling with how to communicate because they can easily spout things off in texts and communicate in that way and have a harder time making that face-to-face communication.
Right, right. And then just you sitting down and talking with them can help that because then they're seeing how we're interacting and how our
Absolutely.
facial expressions. I mean, there's so much more to talking than just
Oh
the
yeah. Modeling
communication
that
part.
behavior, exactly. Modeling that behavior is huge. And that's so helpful. But having kids be a part of that process when you're trying to figure out what motivates them, having them take some ownership and being a part of that and being like invested in that as well
Mhm.
is a huge part of the success of those, any type of plan, anytime you're trying to motivate kids to do anything.
Okay. No, I love that because I know that's something that everybody struggle with.
It's a daily struggle for a
Yeah.
lot of parents.
Okay. With anxiety, what
Mhm.
are you noticing? I mean, I feel like we all know the past few years have just really changed a lot of things for all of us. What are you noticing is the most common things with anxiety in children?
So obviously, since in the last several years, we've seen a spike in anxiety in parents and kids. Personally see a lot of anxiety with just general friendships, a lot of that in middle school. And
Okay.
that's starting, even a little bit younger now, but kind of like this constant desire for perfection or for other things that are maybe not necessarily attainable, and I think a lot of that, and this makes me sound like I'm 95 years old, but I feel like social media is
Mhm.
partially to blame for that because honestly, it feels like, even as adults, when I see a video on Instagram of somebody that's house is immaculate and their dishes are organized and their refrigerator is perfect and everything, and I kind of am like, oh my gosh, I wish my house looked like that or whatever. And that's really not reality anyways. So I think for kids, when their brains aren't even fully developed and when you see these images that are so often changed and altered anyways, it's this constant like need for other or desire to be kind of somebody you're not or to be somebody else or to be something else. And so a lot of that stems, and then you kind of get then into these friendship issues because back to what I was saying is a lot of time kids just don't know how to communicate. They don't know how to problem solve. They don't know how to solve these, issues themselves. And then sometimes when it turns to social media, it kind of can escalate. So I see a lot of I would call it like relational aggression with middle school, especially with girls. It's a tough time, and I feel like that's kind of an age old thing. I think middle school was hard when I was in middle school a
Mhm.
long time ago, and so I think that teaching those skills like empathy skills and basic communication and things like that are really helpful at that age. I I do see also a big spike in or have seen recently in like academic, like testing anxiety,
Okay.
because of the pressures, within schools with, all the standardized testing and whether or not you'll get to the next grade based on this. And so I do see more kids getting nervous about that. And that often, depends on the kind of, maybe the pressure they put on themselves or that maybe is being put on them at home to achieve a certain status academically. So that and obviously in with high schoolers too, the pressures that get put on you with academics, for then getting to the next level, it's kind of like this never ending need for improvement, which is not a bad thing. But when it comes to, anxiety and what those that can physically do to kids, I mean, you see a ton of kids with getting stomach aches, headaches, having trouble sleeping. All of those can present like, that's anxiety in a lot of ways. Not every
Okay.
time, but a lot of times.
Okay. One thing I
Sorry, that
was
was a long
just
answer.
no, 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 that's okay. I'm I'm thinking of when you mentioned like kids and the grades and constantly striving to be better or get, this certain score. I happened to be listening
Mm-hmm.
to a podcast this morning and they were talking about success and how we as a society or parents identify success. And a lot of us will hold on to that, you've got to either get better grades than I did because I want you to be more successful than me, or, as good, you need to get these kind of grades so that you can go off to college. Like it's always this um, feeling that grades identify these individuals. And I'm not sure where I want to go with this, but just like how can we get this out of our head as parents to rather look at the person in front of us rather than looking at like their grades as a representation of them.
Right. So I would say managing your expectations is key. I had a client that I worked with for a really long time last year that this kid was a very average B student, and he tried so hard to get those Bs. And there was a big baseball trip that they were working towards that it was something that it had to be because he had to get A's to get the trip, and it was something he worked, and it wasn't necessarily something that was attainable. For some kids that can be, but it's managing your expectations so that what you're expecting your kids to do is okay, like it is something that's realistic and manageable. So not every kid's going to be an A student, no matter how hard they try. I always tell parents I would much rather focus on effort than academics. When my kids come home, I have a third grader, and when he comes home with, a test that wasn't, 100%, which is okay, I always ask, like, did you try as hard as you can? Did you prepare? Those are things that are, within our control. What can you do to prepare? You can't control what questions are on the test. What can you do to prepare to make sure that you're ready for the test and that you're putting in your effort? And those are the only things that I ask you to do. And if you don't get 100% when you've done those things, that's okay. Nobody gets 100% all the time. I mean, virtually nobody.
Right, right.
But, I think there's a lot of parents that expect, their kids to, get straight A's all the time and get into this college and do this. And, and it's not realistic to think that kids can, follow in this path that the parent is necessarily wanting. There's certainly like, it's really important to like help guide that. But, very often kids do not know what they want to be when they're at that age, and that's okay. And like, so that can, that encouraging that constant like lifelong learning is what I think is really key.
Hmm.
So I think really managing expectations of what is realistically attainable for each kid. So not having some like general rule in your house, A's, when you come in with a report card and this many A's, you get this, or this many B's, because it's different for each kid.
Right. Right.
But,
Well,
I think also focusing on that effort.
yes. Well, and I was going to say, I like how you ask your child about what do you feel? Because I feel like I can assume that maybe my child is not putting in as much effort, like what you see at home. But really, the question ultimately is, do they feel like they've put in
Mm-hmm.
enough effort?
Right. And that's a huge part of it, because very often as parents, we're not right all the time with stuff like that. I'll say, like, you didn't, it doesn't seem like you put in enough effort, but flipping that script and saying, like, well, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about the grade you got? How do you feel about what you did? What's something you could have done differently? And maybe there's nothing that you could have done differently. And that's okay too. But, with this rise in anxiety just in general in our society, a lot of what I talk to not only kids about, but parents about, is keeping in mind what we can control and can't control. And that is really helpful when we're working on anxiety, because that will help then and kind of overflow into this other piece of it, like the academic piece. Because, again, you can't control what's on your test, but you can
Right.
control all these other things. And that helps. That's a very important skill that kids can learn at a young age that helps them in so many different areas in life.
And with the anxiety, I think as well, for them to take ownership of their effort, their what is occurring. Yes, you can't control things coming from the outside, but the way you're responding and handling things you can control. And that should help to bring their anxiety level down, I would think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it also helps them to understand how to make realistic, manageable expectations on their own lives. And
Mhm.
also, making sure that, what they're trying to achieve is not only is attainable, but is also they're part of the process. It always, it always feels better when are, having success, but success is going to look different for everybody.
Mhm.
But I think that, having kids, in the academic piece of it, asking how do you feel? If you can't really just teach that intrinsic motivation, but
Right.
that's going to be a part of that, like, building those skills.
Yeah. Okay. What are some things that we can do to help? Okay, so if you have a child, maybe it's not about school, maybe it's about something else. Maybe I always go back to my own children when it comes to anxiety. I have one who has always dealt, actually, he's been much better now. He doesn't deal with anxiety as much. I don't hear about it as much. But just this constant playing of almost like something is constantly wrong with me. Not like looks or anything like that, but more like this illness or this, these little things. I found this. What is this? Maybe it's cancer, these weird
Mm-hmm.
things that they deal with. How do you get them out of that type of anxiety?
So, and that's like really somebody that like is going to worry about a lot of things. So I
Yes.
mean, there's a ton of techniques that I can mention. I mean, things that are very simple for kids that are young, and, I know your kids are a little older. Breathing techniques are really key for some of the younger kids. And this is so easy to do at home. We do hot chocolate breathing. And so
Okay.
you pretend like you have a cup of hot chocolate and you smell it because it smells so good. And so you take that deep breath in, and then it's too hot to drink. So you blow it out. And so you have these, like, we call it hot chocolate breathing in my house.
Uh-huh.
And
No,
so
it's
you
great.
just
I
do
love
this
it.
like slow in and out. For older kids that might roll their eyes exercise of that. I also have kids that we'll call it square breathing. And so you are drawing a square with your finger. And so on the top line, as you draw it, kind of with your finger, you're going to breathe in for 4 seconds and then out for 4 seconds as you draw down. And then you essentially just draw a square. So those are like very simple things that are sometimes, helpful just to do like some breathing techniques. I love doing I don't know if you've seen the like dry erase dice that you can get. They have them. I've seen them all over, but I know Amazon has them and things like that where they have different, on each side it's a dry erase. And so I will write different techniques on it. And so if you're feeling stressed or worried about it, you roll the dice and then which one is it going to be? Is it going to be a stretching exercise? Is it going to be a breathing exercise? Is it going to be positive affirmations? Like all of those are going to be things that help with the anxiety. And then it's also like a fun way to, kind of have that calming strategy.
Right.
And
it takes their mind off of it immediately. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, like mindfulness is huge. And I work with a lot of parents working on mindfulness with themselves and then with their own kids. But the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 mindfulness is something that's super easy. I do it all the time with kids, but with my own kids. But when you're in that moment of feeling like you're worried about something, you stop and it involves your senses. What are 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. And when you do those things, you stop and you think like, okay, what are 5 things I can see right now? And you look around the room and it changes, it shifts it kind of helps you to reframe the train of thought you were on. And it shifts your thinking and it helps build those senses. I did this in the car on the way to school last week with my 4-year-old because I could tell he was just struggling early on. And so I said, all right, they know what we're going to do now. And so 5 things you can see, and then you kind of go through it and then it doesn't necessarily, nothing is fits every situation, but it really helps even with older kids. And even as parents, like I sometimes, if I just need a second to kind of change the way I'm thinking about something, it kind of helps you to shift gears, and that works on that mindfulness piece as well.
Yeah. It's breaking that, because we go to the negative and many of us who are warriors, we ruminate over and over and over and over, and that breaks it. It just stops it.
Exactly.
Mind gets on something else, and then your mind will travel on to another thought.
Right. But having some like replacement behavior or thought process is what helps. So whether you want to journal or, I know like a lot of the clients I work with at night say like, when I lay down in bed, I have all of these thoughts that start going through my head. And so I will encourage them to write it down. And then once it's written down, you're done worrying about it. So for kids, you can get like an empty tissue box or any type of little box. And, for the little ones, you can do like the pom-poms, those like fuzzy pom-poms, or even like a Post-it note as they get older. And you either, you tell the pom-pom what you're worried about and you put it in the box. And once it's in the box, we're not going to worry about it anymore. Or with Post-its, you write it down. And then once it's in that worry box, that's where it's going to stay. And it helps us to then, you kind of shift gears in terms of focusing your energy on other things that you can control. Because a lot of times what stuff we're worried about is stuff we can't control.
Right. Most of the time.
Yes.
I feel like
that's hard.
Yes. I remember my mother always telling me that her mother would say, so this shows you the line of worry in our family. Like, don't worry about something because it may never happen. Like, we spend so much time worrying about something when most of the time that worry doesn't happen.
Right. And putting your, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just, wasting all that time on something that's just, I don't want to say meaningless, because, there's a reason for our worries, but.
Absolutely. But putting your energy towards things that are going to be positive, things in, whether it's in your life or positive affirmations and all of those things, it's a really good skill to get in, or a habit to get into as a parent, because it's a good skill to teach your kids. When a lot of those things are picked up on when you hear your parents or you see your parents. If I'm constantly saying like, gosh, I'm so worried about this, or I'm so nervous about this, and I'm so, all of those things, those kids will pick up on that. Oh, maybe I should be worried about this. Maybe I should, be nervous about this. What if, I've had several people that have talked recently about anxiety with the weather after the
Mm.
hurricane
Oh,
down
yes.
here in the fall.
Hmm.
And that is really important to think about. What can we control? We cannot control if there's going to be another hurricane. What we can control is how prepared we are. What we can control are, these things. And then that helps, to teach those skills of keeping things in perspective of what you can control and not control.
Okay. What do we do? Like, so you've given us some things to think about or practice with our children. Is there a time that we should then pay attention to, like, this is out of the family's control? This is now time where we see someone
Sure.
instead, like someone
So
like yourself, a counselor or therapist.
yeah, and so I always tell parents, you are your kid's number one advocate. Trust your gut. Trust, if there's something off. If their demeanor has changed, or maybe their grades are slipping, or there's a noticeable change in them in some way. It's oftentimes, something that is not has maybe hasn't been addressed before or yet. My job, what I do is, obviously I'm a counselor by trade, and that's what I've done. But what I do is not necessarily therapy and counseling. It's more
Mhm.
coaching. So what I have a lot of people I work with virtually, but I also, locally here in the Naples area, do meet with a lot of people in person. And, it's kind of, I mean, I have a huge range of clients that I work with in terms of, people that'll just say, hey, my kid's not, my routines at night are hectic. In the morning it's hectic. I just want, like I said, a little more harmony in our household. And I will come in and set up, a routine like that. And I always, and use my best judgment in saying, this is something that, there are certainly times and things where it's appropriate to get a more therapeutic approach or a
Mhm.
counseling situation. And, so I offer like free consultations with all of the people that reach out to me. And I do have people that reach out to me and say, this is what's going on. And then I'll say, what you've got, going on might be more beneficial to be in a different, like a more therapeutic situation. And I can always, kind of refer that way as well. But
Okay.
I would say, it doesn't hurt to, reach out and be proactive, because a lot of times, especially at a younger age, it helps too, because it is so much easier to teach skills to kids at a young age,
Mhm.
before it maybe spirals or it gets worse as they get older. So, use your best judgment, and as a mom or as a dad, and, kind of trust your gut. If you feel like something's off, a lot of times it is. And my role, in working with parents and essentially families, is sometimes you might need a counseling or therapeutic situation for your kid, but what I can offer you isn't, you might not necessarily need that as well as a parent. I can offer you kind of more support in a different way to kind of coexist with that situation.
Okay. Okay. What do you do? So, as you're saying all of this, I'm like, but
Yeah.
with those kids, because I think, and I've got my third one going through puberty now. This is a roller coaster. How I feel like things change drastically. I did not, well, I don't want to say I didn't notice it as much with the boys, because that's not true. Each child showed very different emotions with puberty, hormones, all of that. So, is there anything that you recommend to help families as their children are going through this kind of unsure time where, one day they're up, one day, the next day they're down, and parents don't know what to do? My husband was dealing with my daughter the other day. She was crying. She was telling him that I have no reason that I'm crying. And he's like, he's looking at me like, what is this? I was like, no, that's completely normal. That
you,
happens.
so honestly, it is a roller coaster, and every day you can have super high highs and super low lows. And I feel like the parenting journey is very similar to that. There's days where look around and like, what just happened? You don't really know exactly what precipitated a certain reaction or emotion. But
Mhm.
the best thing I can say is to, it does not help kids if they're heightened or they're elevated in their emotions for you then to meet them up there as well. The best thing you
Okay.
can do is share your calm. And when I say that, I mean, and I also am realistic. It's not always easy to stay calm and patient, but as much as possible of sharing your calm with kids and teaching them, number one, like all of these emotions are okay. You don't want to have kids think that if they get angry or frustrated that it's a bad thing or that it's not okay. It's more teaching what to do when you feel feel that way. Like it's okay to get mad and it's okay to get frustrated and want to yell, but it's not okay to hit your brother. And teaching those like replacement things, but being an open to kids having those emotions and feeling different feelings, because for them, it's amazing how many big feelings come out of these little kids or
Mhm.
these little bodies, and they don't know. It's just as confusing for them. They don't know why they're feeling that way. They don't know what made them feel, my 9-year-old woke up this morning and he looked sad. And I said, what's wrong? And he said, I don't know. I just woke
Oh,
up like this. And I don't, and so, sometimes I kind of, what I call it is like a toolbox. I have like a little, like just mental toolbox, or I've set these up physically with clients too, of like, what's a toolbox? Like, what are things when you're feeling this way? What's something that would help you maybe get back to where we feel comfortable, like, and feel regulated. So you feel calm and you feel in control of how your emotions and how you're feeling. So when you're feeling sad and you wake up like that, what's something that might make you feel better? Maybe we need to do a little exercise to just get the endorphins going and get your heart rate up, and that might help. And so it's not necessarily just like what to do when you get mad, but I would really encourage parents to be okay with the emotions, as long as you're teaching these skills of like what to do when you feel these ways. And that's something I also help parents with.
okay. Okay. So if a child is dealing with sadness or anger, can you give us one or two things to do? I mean, I know you said like to exercise, get them up, get them moving, that type of thing. What about that child who just wants distance?
Yeah, and so it's going to be different for every kid. So if you
Right.
have a kid that like loves music and that's something that is calming, or loves reading, maybe when you're feeling that way and acknowledging, I'm really frustrated right now. Okay, what are some things that I know in my toolbox that will help me? Listening to some music, having, creating even like a calm down corner part of your house or your room with
Right.
some, whether it's like for younger kids, like a glitter bottle where they can kind of calm that way, or using the dice that I was talking about, the dry erase dice,
Okay.
using, having some strategies on there of what to do in those situations. But really it's a lot of trial and error for each kid.
Okay.
You can't just say like, okay, go in your room and calm down. Right. It's not like a one size fits all. Go scream into your
Darn
pillow
it.
because that's okay. I know. I
Right.
wish it was, trust me. But when you allow kids to be a part of that process and you say, when you're frustrated, what makes you feel better? It gives them some ownership of those feelings, and it gives them some ownership of the process. So you can't just say like, when you're mad, go, go run for 10 minutes because that's what helps somebody else, and
Right.
that's not necessarily what helps everybody. So it's really specific to each kid. So taking the time and letting them be a part of that, a lot of times though, especially for younger kids, when you see some of this, like the behaviors or emotions kind of getting more heightened, I usually do a checklist of like, okay, do they need water? Are they hungry? Are they tired? Like basic needs. A lot
Right.
of times there's not all the time, but a lot of times there's one of those things usually helps, especially
Hmm.
that like after school time is the hardest time in our house. I have a kindergartner and he tries so hard. He's so good at school and he tries so hard to keep it, like do everything he's supposed to do. And so he comes home and it kind of like, it's like, okay, now I can, that's where I'm comfortable the most. And I'm feel, and he gets frustrated easier at home than he does at school because he's held it together all day.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, and that's one thing for my own family that I notice is I remember how I felt when I would come home from school, and I see it with my daughter as well. She comes home from school and she just wants to be. She doesn't, because I think, like
Mhm.
you said, like either holding it together or putting on, either being constant talking or not, whatever it is, whatever child you have. My daughter is more, she's quiet, but she probably is similar to me with that. I just want, when I get home, I need silence, like that stimulation, too much
Mhm.
stimulation throughout the day almost. I need silence. I just need to be. And because I remember how I felt, I'm able to provide that for her and allow her to just be. So even just having maybe parents think about,
Mhm.
how was it for you when you came home from school? Like, go back in that thought process and
Right.
remember, and everybody's different.
Oh, yeah,
Some
exactly.
kids would probably like to
That's true,
talk.
but yeah, but there's a lot of kids who don't want to talk. And if you have a
Right.
parent that's like, tell me about your day, I want to hear everything, or I want to know what, and sometimes you have parents that get over involved then of like, what did so and so say to so and so at school? And then that's a problem also. But, I feel like we also have a lot of parents that overpack kids' schedules. And so you
Mm-hmm.
have kids that go, they're so overly stimulated from being in school all day and trying and using their brains all day in so many different ways. And it's so mentally taxing. And then they go to baseball or soccer and swimming and or guitar or piano, like all of these things. And there's sometimes it's just sometimes too much. And so I would say again, just being really present with your kids and knowing what works for them, what doesn't work for them, but also being okay with that. Not only, letting them be a part of that process is really huge. And then that makes, especially for your kids at their age, it makes them feel like they're being listened to, they're heard, and
Mm-hmm.
that's really helpful.
Yeah. Perfect. All right. I don't want to take any of your time away. I want you to let us know, one, how can we find you?
So I have a website, katherinewaltersconsulting.com. That is the best way to get information about the services I offer and how I can help. And you can directly message me on there and schedule time. I do offer a free consultation for anybody to make sure it's a good fit and what they're looking for. I am on Instagram and Facebook, Katherine Walters Consulting. Yeah, all my information you can find really on my website.
Okay, perfect. And then can you leave our listeners, like, if there's one thing that they can take today with them to use throughout the week to help them raise healthier humans, can you provide us with that?
Gosh, there's so many things. I would just say, honestly, like supporting and loving your kids and meeting them where they are and who they are is the best advice I can give. So often as parents, we kind of try and alter or persuade or put our expectations on them, and just
Mm.
letting them be the amazing individuals that they are, and loving them and meeting them where they are is probably the best advice I can give.
I love that. I 100% agree. Something that I'm working towards now with
We
my
all
children.
are.
Yeah.
Same, exactly. It's amazing to see as they grow and develop and become their own people. It's such an amazing part of parenting to see
Mhm.
them blossom and to see them grow. It's a really rewarding, really cool thing.
Yeah, most definitely. And I notice for my family, as my children get older, you want so much for them, but they're their own people and it's their life to live. I mean, not that you're trying to, not like you're trying to live vicariously through them, but that this is really their life. So even just the little statements of, maybe try this way instead, sometimes
Mhm.
is not what should be said.
Well, when you think about it, how you might handle a situation they're going through isn't necessarily how you would have handled it when you were their age. And those are things that they need to experience. And those are ways they have to figure out how to problem solve on their own. And you can certainly help guide that. But when they don't have those skills, they become adults that turn to somebody else to solve all their problems and fix their problems,
Mm.
and then inadvertently become, it becomes more difficult as an adult and as you grow. So, teaching those skills in a loving way, but allowing them to kind of spread their wings is hard, but it's really important.
Yeah. Oh,
And then
that was
being there
great.
for them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day for this.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thanks for talking to me.
Of course.
Thanks for taking the time out of your day to listen to our podcast. We hope you found this information valuable and can incorporate it into your family's life. Make sure to check out our show notes for all the important links available. Come join us on Facebook at Moms Raising Healthy Humans community page. Also, please check out our wide range of memberships, family monthly focus ideas, challenges, live events, and on-demand and live workouts, meal plans, and so much more. Head to formfitonline.com. And as always, keep moving.